Welcome to this short video which will take you through the process of my first attempt at trying to transfer an image using an acrylic medium. You can choose between using a cheap acrylic paint or a clear acrylic gel. I'm going to use paint because it shows up better on the video. I'm applying the paint with a cheap paintbrush. What I learned from subsequent attempts was that it's important to get an even coverage and not to put too much of the acrylic medium, otherwise it spills over the edge and it gets onto the back of the image, and then it's very difficult to get that back off. I'm using an image that was printed on a laserjet printer, but you can use photocopies. You can also use inkjet, bubblejet images, but they will be more fragile. I'm using a bone folder or a paper creaser to actually spread the image onto the paper. You can see the paper that I'm using to put this onto is a coloured textured paper. That's really just so it shows up the image better on camera. Work from the centre of the image and spread the paint, the acrylic gel, out as evenly as possible, and avoid pressing it out from under the paper and over the edges. As I said before, if you get it onto this back, when you come to remove the image later, that will resist and you'll be stuck with that bit forever. I've used a piece of white plastic behind the paper that I'm transferring the image onto, just to stop the water later transferring and cockling the paper underneath. Right, well, I'm not going to make you watch paint dry. This has been left overnight to dry, but I have found with subsequent experiments that it takes about 4 hours for this to completely dry and to be ready for this process. I'm using a sponge, a wet sponge, to do this next stage, but you can use a brush. I also use my finger in places where the image might be slightly fragile. As you work more and more water into the paper, you can start to see it coming away and revealing the image underneath. If you've used an inkjet or bubble jet image, don't be quite so aggressive with this. You need to be very careful not to rub away a bubble jet image. The water will actually get into the inks because they're not quite waterproof, and if you're rubbing too hard, that ink will start to lift away. It gives quite a nice image, but it's a very faded look. As I rub more of the paper away, you can start to see in the background the difference between the actual paper that I've transferred it onto and the paint that I've used that's surrounding the image. Obviously, if you were using a clear gel, you wouldn't have this effect, but it's something to be aware of. Now you can see the paper tearing, and it's just a matter now of cleaning up the image and getting it to the point where I want it to be. I then went on to try this with leather, and I'm hoping next week to actually try it on fabric. I hope you'll find this video helpful, and maybe you'll give it a go yourself.